god, off!
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Riff and Tear, a subsidiary of Diatonic Dissection. In this video, we'll be looking at Atlan Battleground, which is the music that accompanies you as you pilot your Atlan/mech like an angry Shinji to beat the shit out of the titans that you never got to fight in Doom Eternal, no matter how many bullets you fired at them. Fun fact, Hugo Martin, director of Doom Eternal and Dark Ages, was a concept artist for the movie Pacific Rim. Looking at some of his paintings on his website, you can see where a lot of the inspiration came from for the design of the Atlans. Usual YouTube stuff: like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and have a swan burger in the name of the algorithm gods. If you want the sheet music for this video, along with all my other videos, for free, then head on over to the Diatonic Dissection Patreon, patreon.com/diatonicdissection. There's a link down below to save you having to spell it out. Now, let's get into it, as long intros not only murder the watch time of my videos, but also do terrible things to the body afterwards. The tempo is 115 BPM, and the key is most likely D minor, but I can't be 100% sure, as there are regular C sharps, and it all goes a bit haywire in the final riff. A quick note about the tempo. Even though this track has a predominantly compound feel, 3 subdivisions per measure, I've been counting it as 4. Here is a demo of straight and compound feel. I decided to do the tempo as a more straightforward thing, as it will allow us to deal with the multiple rhythms that we'll see in the track. We'll have more polyrhythms, etc., but we'll get into that when we reach it on drums. Now, let's get into it. In section A, there isn't much going on with the guitar or the drums, as it's mostly synths, and, as we've established, I don't know anything about them. They play in the last few bars to build up into section B. You start on the D and then finish on the C sharp. The drums play the same rhythm as the guitar part on the low toms and kick. Here it is. Now, in section B, we can actually get going. The rhythm is pretty simple, but a key part to the sound is to mute the strings slightly on the 8th note triplets. For the last 4 bars, you have the rhythm that makes up section C, but it has a high pass filter on it. Here is the whole part. Before we get into the drums for section B, here is a quick primer on polyrhythms for this track. This track uses 2 against 3 a lot, so here is a demo on drums, unlike the terrible demo of 4 against 3 from my last video on Unchained Predator. Link up in the corner so you can go and laugh at it. With all of that talk about polyrhythms out of the way, here is section B on drums. The end of every 4 bars has the 2 against 3 rhythm, and it ends with just some hits on the downbeat to accompany the filtered guitar. The guitar part for section C uses the rhythm from the end of section B, but using power chords and features a string bend and release and a little chromatic run. The drums are playing 8-note triplets on the kick with some cymbal embellishments for the first 4 bars, with more of the 2 against 3 polyrhythm being used in the last 4 bars. There isn't much going on with sections D and E as it's primarily synths, but the guitar does play the rhythm that will be used in section F. For section F, we're back on with drums and guitar. The guitar is doing the bendy rhythm thing from the end of section E, but with actual notes instead of muting. The end has you play with the open C sharp and then 3 notes on the octave above. The drums are mostly following the guitar for section F, but you get some flourishes on the kick. You'll also be doing more of the 3 against 2 polyrhythm. The section ends with the setup for section G. section G, we see a return of sorts of the beloved gent siren, with the two clashing notes being played together as opposed to alternately, and then moving to a C sharp minor third. In between these chords, you'll be doing some stuff on the bottom string, so you may need to practice the movement between the different sets of strings. The drums follow the guitar for the most part in section G, but the main change is what your leading hand will be doing. For the first half, you'll be playing the quarter note triplets, and then in the second half, just the pulse. Now for something new. This track features a choir that you will have heard already in the previous demos, the section G, so that kind of ruins the surprise. It starts with D minor over A, which then moves into an A major chord, giving us that descent from D to C sharp that we've seen before in the track. Second time around, before the change, the inverted D minor briefly becomes a G minor add 9, gives it a bit of motion before the A major. Section H is another quiet one with a lot of synths, so here is a compilation of the various noises I made failing to try and record the drums for Section I.
Oh my god. Off! Goodness sake.
For Section I, the guitar part is fairly simple, but you do have more bends to do. Apart from that, it's mostly quarter and eighth note triplets. as you will have seen from the prior, montage of meltdowns I had trying to record it, I had to admit defeat for the drums for section I. I just couldn't get the blasts clean enough, so I just programmed them so it doesn't sound like I'm having some sort of seizure while on the drums. In addition to the blast beats, there are also some linear fills. Appears again in the latter half of section I, and it's slightly different to section G. The chords used are D minor, B flat and A with various inversions. If you move the guitar part up an octave, add the choir and change the drums a bit, you get a cool black metal idea. Section J. Even though it is the last section, you have the most interesting guitar part with lots of string skipping, jumps, and random accidental notes. This is the main reason that I couldn't figure out the key, as there are E flats and A naturals, etc. In another previous video of mine about the music of Robotnik from the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, link up in the corner, I took the parts of an arpeggio and made them into chords, and it became quite jazzy. If we do the same thing with the guitar riff from section J, we get some very weird jazz. The drums seem fairly simple, but feature something that we have not seen so far in the Dark Ages soundtrack: ghost notes. These are very soft notes played on the snare drum that give your grooves a bit of spice. Here is a demo. The ghost notes in question for section J are played on the second beat of each second bar and go along with more of the 2 against 3 polyrhythms. And that's it. Quite a short one this time, but we still managed to drag it out into goodness knows how much analysis. Do all the usual YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and forge stamps in the name of the algorithm gods. If you want the sheet music for this and for my previous videos, then head on over to the Diatonic Dissection Patreon, patreon.com/Diatonic Dissection. There's a link down below to save you having to spell it all out. Thanks for watching if you're still here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.